How's it?
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
Doing really well.
Cool. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you reaching out.
Cool, man. Welcome to the show.
I,
The podcast called Crisscross. So we chat about everything CrossFit and a little bit more.
Fantastic. And I
James,
pronounce your name Christelle, correct?
yes, that is correct. Yes, well done.
I just want to make sure I get that right.
Yeah. James, first of all,
Awesome.
tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history in the sport. It goes back, way back, about 11 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that makes me sound almost a little bit old. Yeah, so I kind of stumbled on CrossFit I don't know, I think I heard about it in 2006, but I probably started like doing it in 2007. And a lot of it, I was just training with a buddy of mine, and we were really into kettlebells. And there was this website called Jim Jones, and there was this flashy action movie called The 300, which was about it was like a romanticized and fictional story of the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. But anyway, um, one of the trainers for the characters in that movie, because they just looked all like jacked and amazing, and a lot of that had to do with them, but also a lot of that had to do with the filming of movie magic. But anyway, one of the trainers for that movie was a fellow by the name of Mark Twight, who ran this online website called Jim Jones. And through that website, Mark Twight had some connection with Coach Greg Glassman in CrossFit. And then through there, we kind of down the rabbit hole stumbled on CrossFit. And the fellow I was training with at the time, his name is Mike. He introduced me. He's like, you got to check this website out, thecrossfit.com. And this is back probably in 2007, and started there. And slowly, like a lot of people, worked my way to I don't know if you've been to a level one, but worked my way to a CrossFit level one. And then, the rest has been the last 12, 13 years.
And you started competing pretty early on. I know your first games was in 2009, and you'd only be doing CrossFit for not a few years. How was that experience, if you think back now, looking to this year's games, which will also be taking place at the ranch?
Yeah. I was joking with somebody about this recently, as far as like getting involved with CrossFit in 2009. And I still remember very vividly being on the website in 2007 and seeing it was a PDF flyer for the 2007 games. And it's worth a hunt to go look at it, just to have perspective on how far the games have come. And in the States, the analogy I make is like when the NFL first started, when American football first started. And I imagine like rugby might have been the same way, but it was like just guys out there in leather helmets banging into each other in the mud, whereas like rugby, instead of having uprights, they were just kicking it through a tree or something like that. But it was really cool, because from my perspective in 2009, the games was this massive life impacting level event because of how I viewed CrossFit and how much I looked up to it. In retrospect, it was just, 300 people hanging out at Dave Castro's farm playing in the dirt. And that's not to undermine its importance or how cool the event was, but in comparison to what they've done now, I mean, the games hosting in LA and in Madison, and just the amount of attendance there, and the amount of participants, from over, 120, I think it was 140 countries, in 2019. And now this year they hosted an online only games, and now they're going to have an in-person games back in CrossFit. I think the feeling for me was really, really, really important and impactful. And it was a huge stage, but, and it was also really interesting to look back at, a lot of people, early adopters of anything, like the first person who ever had the first iPhone or the first iPod, or, it was the coolest person. You looked at them and they're like, what the heck is that thing? And now you're like, oh, that guy was the coolest person ever. And, you were involved with a lot of people who now are doing such bigger and different things, in CrossFit. And that's where I met people like Pat Barber, who I had looked up to in CrossFit and learned from the videos. And, now he's gone on to work on seminar staff, and he's coached at the Santa Cruz gyms. And now he and his wife run an online programming platform for affiliates. And, that's where I really was like, where I really first cast. I met other colleagues who I work with, seminar staff. I met other games athletes who go on and open, huge successful affiliates, and, fill in the blank. It was a really cool, I took my level 1 in 2008 with Katie Henniger and Bill Henniger, Katie and Bill, who own and run Rogue Fitness now, an incredibly huge, impactful company. At that time, I think they were just making like ring straps in their living room. It's cool to have the perspective of seeing it all be on the ground floor and seeing how far it's come. And, for me at the time, it was amazing then, but I think it's even more amazing now to see just the growth.
And you were part of that from the very early stages of CrossFit. And you were talking about the games, about 300 people just throwing it down in the dirt. It's almost gone full circle with now only 10 people going to the ranch with Dave Castro and maybe a few film crew and the judges. And it's, again, just going to be a few friends throwing it down in the dirt, just, a little bit more fancy.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see the games this year. I think in my head, it would have been ideal to have maybe 10 athletes on both sides, but I know they were dealing with a lot of restrictions and things like that. I'm also excited to see, because I think from a competitive standpoint, it's easy to hide in a field of 40. It's easy to hide in a field of, 120. I think we'll see a lot of special things from these athletes just because they are so exposed. And in a competition of 5, I think you have to put so much out there now, more on the line, and there'll be so many more eyes on you, which I think is really exciting. And I think in a way, even though it's not the games many people had expected, I do believe it'll be a breath of fresh air and a really exciting event just because it's something we've really never seen before. And that's always really cool. And I still think, you have the fittest there, despite different discussions of that and different points of view, I think the fittest athletes will still come out on top.
And those are the 5 on each side fittest people. If you just look at what they did during the online games. And James, yourself being a competitor at the games for so many years, you thrive off of the crowd. I mean, you thrive off of your fellow competitors and the energy and what they accomplish and just the times and the scores they put up with just themselves, not having anybody to go off of. I mean, you just look at Matt Frazier's time with Friendly Fran. I mean, that is just remarkable. And he had nobody to go off of. So I want to agree with you. And I think these athletes are really going to put up a show, even with no spectators. With the games this year, we haven't seen anything like this before. But CrossFit in the last 2 years has changed so much, almost more than it has in the prior 9 years. I mean, just looking at taking away regionals and including sanctionals, and then just in the last 6 months with a very confusing and emotional rough year for the world, but for CrossFit as well, change of ownership. How would you describe this last 2 years, being so involved in the sport professionally and as an athlete?
I don't want to say, I want to say tumultuous, but that has such like a negative connotation with it. I think if you can look for positivity and change almost always is really positive. So, there's been so much change. And like I said, it has been tumultuous in the sense that there have been so many moving parts and things happened, I think, that just totally surprised people. But, I've talked to a couple different, commentators on the culture in the sport and the community of CrossFit. And I do hear a lot of people, and this is what's cool about this is from different parts of the globe. I hear a lot of people that are hopeful. One of the things, and I've talked to a lot of small gym owners right now and other small business owners, because I think for everybody, COVID, regardless of people's beliefs around it, have created some very significant economic, emotional, physical, psychological challenges. And, one of the common threads of hope I have heard from people is that, I don't know what the next step is going to be. I don't know what the best course of action is going to be, but as long as I can keep moving forward, we're going to come out better on the other side. And, I think CrossFit had gotten to a point where as a company, its maturity, it needed some new things or some different things in order to continue to thrive, and continue to grow. And that's not to knock, and I've said this a bunch too, and cut me off if I'm getting too long-winded.
Not a problem.
Yeah, good. That's not to knock, and I've said this a couple of times, that there was so much good that had happened in CrossFit up until, Greg Glassman's comments on Twitter, and the issues with, potential sexual harassment in certain areas of the company, or, whatever the media had portrayed. I think one of the things that CrossFit hadn't done well up until that point was highlight all of the good and excellence that existed inside of them as a company. And I have a pretty special, I think a pretty unique, special perspective with that. I've had the great pleasure of, actually this October will be my 10th year of working with CrossFit seminar staff. So our training arm, and just the cadre of trainers, our leadership, with Nicole Carroll and Dave Castro, our admin team. I mean, these are people who, even if they weren't coaches, were extremely talented in whatever field that they decided to transport from into CrossFit. And they had done a lot of great work inside of CrossFit, and as far as growing the brand and contributing to the community that people never even knew about. And that partly was on us for not shining a light on that, but there were just a lot of people who were just like, put their head down, work, don't ask for appreciation or acknowledgement. And they'd done some amazing things. And I think maybe that's one of the things that gets to come out of changing leadership now, is that I think more of that. And I also think with the global growth of CrossFit, I think over 50% of our affiliates exist outside of the United States, which is, I think even there's over 50 of the web traffic to CrossFit.com comes from outside of the United States, which are amazing stats. I think one of the big changes in leadership now is how do we continue to nurture the growth of the CrossFit community globally? And I think that's super cool, because there are a lot of people in the US who are like, oh, CrossFit's as big as it's going to get. And you're like, hey guys, the US, I mean, you look at a map, is really just, economically might have a lot of influence, it has a pretty decent population, but compared to other parts of the world, it's still just like a tiny blip on the map. There's so much more room for CrossFit to grow. And, I've been lucky enough to see that because of my travels through seminar staff. You go to certain parts of the world and you're like, oh man, CrossFit is just starting here. And it was cool because it was like, this is CrossFit 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, because there are certain nice elements of the community when it's smaller. But I think that's definitely one of the biggest things I've seen, is just regardless of what needs to happen, is that I think there's a pretty hopeful push to continue the growth of CrossFit despite the challenges. And there's so much good in people, you get this, who care about the community and want it to continue forward, and don't want to look at the actions of a small few as enough reason to condemn or destroy or just stop CrossFit, So I'm pretty hopeful, and it has been a wild year though, for everybody. And that's like the joke is like hashtag 2020, but immense amounts of change in all areas.
I think for me, with COVID having such a big impact on the globe, not just CrossFit, on all aspects of billions of people's lives, I think it was interesting for me specifically to see smack bam in the middle of all of this, CrossFit goes through something that none of us saw coming. I think even if it happened in 2019, people would have been just as surprised. But now, being locked in your house, you can't even go out to your box and, chat to your friends about it, and still enjoy the culture of now you're stuck in your house and you're just seeing everything happening online. So interesting here, difficult here. I want to go back to your history with CrossFit. I read an article I can't remember which website, but somebody did an interview with you, and you spoke a little about your mom and her doing her level 1. And you mentioned something, and this was an article about 5 years ago, that you said you hope to help her open an affiliate. Did that ever happen?
It hasn't happened yet, but I will say my mom since then, her journey as a coach has evolved a lot. I mean, she took her level 1 a handful of years ago, and she now has her level 2. So she's a CrossFit level 2 trainer, which is pretty cool for me to see. She had coach classes at the local affiliate she was attending, and the longer that the social distancing and quarantine practices and occupancy guidelines have changed, the longer that's gone on with COVID. We've talked a lot about doing some sort of affiliate for her at the garage. She has a 3-bay garage, so we've chatted about that a lot. I can't say it won't ever happen, but her ability as a coach, I think, could definitely support it, which is a really cool thing to see. I mean, it was immensely transformative of her life. And I think all of us have a million stories like this, or maybe even just one really impactful story. But it was a really cool thing for me to watch as a practitioner and teacher of the program, because it was this very solid upfront reminder of like, oh yeah, CrossFit works, And so no affiliate yet for mom, but yeah, she's a level 2 coach, which is a big push. Maybe I'll try and push her toward the level 3, and then we'll go from there.
That would be pretty cool. So do you ever train with her, or was it just dishing out some coaching tips here and there?
Yeah. So in the start of her journey, I'd like to think she might have a different perspective. I'd like to think I stayed pretty hands off. I was really involved in CrossFit, and she was very supportive of that, but, and active in her own way, but not, particularly active in the gym setting or functional fitness setting really. And she kind of just consumed it on her own and developed it in her own way. And, I'd give her little coaching tips here and there. Like we've definitely, like when I'm home, we'll try and work out together, but it's not easy to coach your mom.
Well, she coached you your whole life, so I understand.
Right. So yeah, she jokes about that, but I've been able to give her some tips, or at least I'd like to think so. And she'll tell me sometimes, like I'll tell her, hey, you need to push your knees out. And she's like, I am pushing my knees out. And you know how that goes, right? Like, so, but she does well. She's a good athlete, a good mover. So normally we just try and work out together. I don't try and coach her too much.
You had a very good run with the games. There was one stage where you attended every single games from 2009. You won a handful of affiliate cups with 2 different teams. And your life since not going to the games anymore, competing as much, was that a decision that you made outright, or did it just happen? Life.
I was a little combination of both. In retrospect, I think I was immature in my decision to like cut competing off in the way that I did out of my life. So it was 2016, and kind of leading up to the games in 2016, I had sort of decided I want to move back up to Boston. And I did have this feeling too, and part of this maybe just been my own immaturity of not being able to effectively balance both. But I had some personal goals and career goals that I wanted to pursue, and I just didn't feel like I could balance those and keep competing, because I didn't want to just train and compete to just be good enough. It's like I was very much in this mindset of like, if I'm going to train and I'm going to compete, we're going to do so to win. And I think that requires us, I believe that required a certain level of commitment. And I think there are some athletes out there who seem to balance things very, very well. But at the end of the day, push comes to shove, athletes who are doing the best, winning the most, treat it like a full-time job. And there were other things in my life that I wanted to treat like a full-time job too. So, my solution was to be like, all right, my competing cup was very full. I had been really fortunate with the people I trained with, were coached by, whether that be coaches and athletes up in Boston or down in Tennessee at Mayhem. So, I felt comfortable walking away from the goal of like not training to win the games anymore. But I think I was like kidding myself when I was like, yeah, I don't need to compete or train hard anymore. That was definitely something it took me like almost 2 or 3 years to reconcile and realize like how much I missed that, and find a way to still be competitive and embrace that part, because that's definitely some part of who I am, and share that with other aspects of my life. I kind of took like a cold turkey approach, like I quit, didn't work out for 4 months after I came home.
Not at all, like nothing.
Not a thing. I think I've tried, I might have like done like 2 workouts, but it was like, I pretty much just came home and quit, didn't work out for 4 months. And, in retrospect, that was the wrong approach for me. And because it took a while to get back to training purposefully again. And I think I just tried to convince myself of really, like this, that attitude of like, well, if you're not training to win the games, what's the point? And if I look at my life, when I started CrossFit, I never had the idea of competing in my mentality. I did CrossFit because I liked what it did for me socially, physically. And I liked the seeing how far I could push my body in that realm. I enjoyed the struggle that workouts presented. And somewhere along the line, I had convinced myself like that wasn't what was important. Only winning was important. And, afterwards I convinced myself that the only way to compete or the only way to train was only if you're winning. And that was like I said, in retrospect, not to be redundant, but that was a mistake. It took me a while to remember that the reason I started CrossFit is just because I liked how it made me feel, not necessarily what it allowed me to accomplish. And I bet a lot of athletes go through that.
Yeah. And I've spoken to a few games athletes that also like approached retirement or decided not to compete anymore. And they kind of share the same sentiment. Do you think you had a level of burnout to just go cold turkey and just stop for 4 months after you did the sport for so long and it was such a big part of your life?
I mean, I definitely think I was, there were times where I felt like it was more work than fun, but that is how we treated it. And even in years prior, like I would feel pretty tired by the end of the season, but I would usually take like a month or 2, not necessarily off, but I would just like go take local or classes at an affiliate. And, 1 workout a day, I would take 2 days a week off. And then after like a month or 2 of that, like I felt good, ready to rock back into it. So I just think it was like, I mismanaged, resources in the sense of being like, well, I have these other goals in my life. And I was just convinced of the fact that in order for me to pursue those goals, I had to like totally stop competing, and that competing wasn't worthwhile unless you're winning the games, which was, I think was, I don't know. I think it was like a silly way for me to approach it, because there's clearly something intrinsically very valuable about training and competing to me. And, it nurtures me in a very special way, even if I'm not winning the games. And I lost sight of that. And I think it's, it's easy to just have that become your identity, like games champion. That's the only way I exist in CrossFit, which was short-sighted and narrow-minded, but that's one of those things you can't reflect on and see until after the fact, unfortunately.
Don't you think it was also because of the people that you surrounded yourself with that had exactly the same mentality? Yeah. I'm going to throw the name out there, Rich Froning. I mean, he still trains every single day to be a champion, and he's been a champion multiple times, and we can see he's still going to keep on going. But besides Rich, the other team members, the other people that you surrounded yourself with, specifically at Mayhem. I mean, 40% of the games athletes going to the ranch is from Tennessee. So, I mean, that's something about the mentality and the culture in not just Mayhem, but I mean, in the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, honestly, that was one of the big things that contributed to our success, especially from a team perspective. Because I think there were a couple other teams, the CrossFit Ute team, CrossFit New England's team at times, Mayhem, the Invictus team, that really just took this view of that the team side was as important as the individual side and required the same level of commitment and dedication. And, I think one of the big reasons we were so successful at Mayhem, and they still are, is because whether it's through, Rich's force of will or just the environment that now exists down there, it was just a group of people who all were really committed to winning. you know, and everyone kind of knew that about each other without actually stating it. And that made it easier, right? Because you need an ecosystem where everyone understands and is super supportive of that, because, you know, once it becomes a full-time job, you need other people to help you support that, because it's really busy and there's a lot that goes on with it. You know, I'm not going to say it's harder than any other full-time job, because I don't necessarily think it is, but
I mean, physically it is.
yeah, physically it definitely it is, but it's like it requires just as much work as someone going into, you know, who wants to be successful at being an accountant, you know. It's like they have to put in just as many hours. So, and if you want to be successful at being an accountant, and you don't go hang out with a bunch of part-time accountants, you hang out with other full-time accountants, you know. So, and training was the same way. And that was super helpful. And even the extended group, you know, not just people who are competing, Mayhem was a really easy place to compete and train, because like you said, that was the culture down there. You know, everything from like, you know, there were, you know, the masseuse and the body workers and the chiropractors, you know, were all members at the gym, and, you know, the local restaurant. And Cookeville is not a terribly huge town. So it was like, with Rich's success so far, you know, everybody kind of knew what you were doing if you were on the Mayhem team. So that made it easy to keep that up.
With your involvement with the CrossFit seminar staff, and specifically the level 1, you spend quite an amount of time overseas. You travel quite a bit. Tell us about that, and incorporating that into your lifestyle and your respective businesses, because you don't just have one business.
Yeah. Well, right now, I mean, the travel is much less, obviously, because everything going on with COVID. But you know, when I first started on seminar staff, the first 5 years, you know, like I said, I count myself immensely lucky to have the perspective of travel and meeting new people and people from across the globe. Like, I wouldn't change that experience for the world. I was able to spend a month in South Korea. We did probably, you know, I think we did 10 seminars in a month, and we did a handful of like the first level 2s over there, which was a wild experience, because we did a lot of that through translation. And I spent a month in Australia, different parts of Australia. I spent some time down in South Africa. It's a long time ago, in Cape Town, and then up in Joburg, which was very, very cool. You know, in South America as well. So, you know, the travel has been incredible, and now it's much less. And part of that is a beautiful thing, because it means, you know, one of the reasons we had to travel in the past is because we just didn't have enough staff. I mean, we had like one staff member in South Korea, you know, and now we have a cadre of over, you know, 200 seminar staff on just about, except Antarctica, every continent on the planet. And our senior staff title is, we're called Flow Masters. That's sort of like the I guess our technical title is Course Overseer, but Flow Master sounds cooler. Anyway, but now we have Flow Masters again on just about every continent, aside from Antarctica, and that's not something we always had. So I travel a lot less, and that's just due to the growth and the quality growth of trainers all over the world, which is a really cool thing to see. You know, in parts of South America now, we run entire seminars in Spanish, which for the most part, we've done, you know, 90% of our foreign language gigs translated. But now we have staff who are bilingual or trilingual, speak 3 languages. And it's just an incredible thing to see and be a part of that. Like, it totally changed my perspective on the broadness of the world, and just the growth of CrossFit and the importance of CrossFit in general. So, you know, it's been amazing. I miss it desperately. Like I you know, I can't wait for, I've done a little bit of traveling in the US, which has been really wonderful. And I can't wait for, you know, more international travel to open up so where it's easier again. I miss it so much. So it's very cool.
You were talking about the quality of coaches that's gone up. There's a lot of people that have acquired their level 1. Some people just doing it just to be able to open a box and, you know, see how it goes. But you also have a coaches development program. How does that differ just from your normal L1 certificate and L1 training, and working with coaches just to become a CrossFit coach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the coaches development program that I co-own, and it was originally started by Denise Thomas and Austin Malleolo. And to just give it some context. So like the CrossFit Level 1 course is your broad brushstroke introduction to CrossFit methodology. It's a 2-day course, and it just is, it's a review really of the 9 foundational movements and our core theories. The Level 2 course, is really something we recommend that people have up to, 6 months to a year of full-time coaching under their belt. And that's more like a clinical. So whereas Level 1, we're teaching you about the methodology in the course. The Level 2, you're going to come in and show me your coaching skills, and we're going to work on 6 basic coaching criteria. And it's a clinical. We're going to try and identify what you do well and what you could do better at, and give you tools to try and leave that course and continue to develop those things. The coach's development course, Denise and Austin started sort of as, it would be like evolution, like an evolution just beyond the Level 2. It was like if you finish the Level 2, but are looking for something to kind of peel back another layer of the onion, the coaching development course was meant to fit that. So it's going to be, it's even smaller. Like, so for example, Level 1s are often 40 to 50 people. Level 2s are less than 30, sometimes as small as, 14. The coaching development is probably going to be maybe 1 or 2 participants, and then, myself, Denise, or Austin. So there's just a lot more time for you to be involved with a coach. And we're going to look at stuff that goes beyond the 6 coaching criteria in the Level 2. Even though that stuff is essential and we continually refine that, we're going to kind of open up to all the ins and outs required to run a class, and start talking about even things needed to run, in our experience, an affiliate effectively. And the coaching development spans, you can do a 1-day course, a 3-day, or a 5-day, but I would just say it's much more in depth into the day-to-day and class-to-class operations. So that's kind of how it started, and what it facilitates. And what's cool about the coaching development course is we've identified some partners and affiliates all over the globe now, who offer we've identified and had them offer coaching development courses in other countries, which is really awesome. We've had a lot of good success in Italy, over in the UK, and other parts of the US. And, these trainers who are doing the coaches development course in other countries and other places, they're colleagues on seminar staff. They run great affiliates. They have over a decade of experience. It's been a really cool course. And mainly because one of the things that I always feel a little bit melancholy about with seminars is 2 days is just, you meet amazing people. Here we are touching base, halfway across the globe. And it's like, the reason that happens is because there's just good people existing in the community. And I always say 2 days is not enough time to get to know everybody at those courses as much as I would like. And the coaching development course really allows you to create, stronger bonds and connections, which is really cool.
Speaking about the Level 1, if you look back, you were talking about refinement specifically. If you look back, let's say 5 years, the L1 book was like, 130 pages. If you download it now, it's double, So that refinement of our sport and the movements and the methodology and so on, it shows on paper how it has grown and how it's constantly developing. Who refines that? Who looks at that? Who's involved in the development of that, of the L1 book and the L2 and the L3 and so on?
Yes. I mean, even if you go back and hunt through the dusty tomes of CrossFit.com, I mean, I don't even really think Greg and his team, they might have had a plan to offer seminars to start with. I mean, the rumor is there was a group of, I believe, special operations police officers in Florida, TJ Cooper, reached out to Greg and said, hey, we want to come to your, we want you to come to a seminar for us. And Greg was like, I don't do them. And he said, all right, well, we're going to come learn from you for a little while. And, the original Level 1 was 3 days long, and it was trial by fire. It was just people going through workouts and listening to lectures. And it certainly has refined over the years. And I think a lot of that has to do with feedback and need from the community. It used to be, hey, come out to Santa Cruz and you can learn from CrossFit. And then it was, somebody in Boston was like, hey, I got 20 affiliates out here who want a seminar, come do a seminar in Boston. And hey, we think the seminar should be 2 days. And, we've continued to, there's a pretty robust feedback system for seminar staff as far as receiving feedback, both from our employees as well as just the community, because 15,000 affiliates worldwide, that's a lot of diversified backgrounds and a lot of good brains. So it's silly not to take that feedback. But to answer your question specifically back home, so CrossFit training department has developed an admin team. And a lot of those admin team are just very senior head trainers and flow masters from seminar staff who now work on refining course material. So there's a group of people, and like I said, a lot of that is directed now, now wholly by Nicole Carroll, but in the past, Nicole Carroll, Dave Castro. There are people like other people again who have just been flow masters for years who work on that kind of stuff. Yeah, so they have a pretty well built out team and to make that stuff happen.
A little bit more about your businesses, Hamplan, and tell us about that. How long you've been going with that, and coaching professional athletes versus coaching just everyday folk. How do you experience? Let's stick first. Let me ask one question at a time.
Yeah. I like both of those. So Hamplan again. Was originally started by Spencer Hendel and Austin Malleolo. And it was kind of it's a cool idea. I mean, the reason they started it is because both of those guys, successful games athletes, but also very different athletes. Austin stands at a height of like 2 feet, 5 inches tall, and Spencer's like 7'8", but they both had like very distinct strengths and weaknesses. But what was cool is that they were kind of following similar programs, but they would tweak it in specific ways to, speak to and improve their weaknesses. So that was kind of how they started the Hamplan, because they wanted to share that with other people, because it was like tall guy versus small guy CrossFit. I guess that's probably the easiest way to sum it up. And originally they just offered it to competitors, online programming. And, now over the last 5+ years, we built it out, and we offer affiliate programming and programming for competitors and really everybody in between. And, I think our big stake in the ground for us is not just programming, but also education, teaching people some of the how and why to equip them, whether they're coaches or athletes, to enjoy or share their fitness journey with others. So, yeah, and what's really cool and fun for me about that is, we have affiliates all over the globe now, which is just really fun to see and kind of hear different perspectives and kind of just keep tabs on that stuff. So, we're getting really excited. We've grown a lot in the last year. COVID, again, when COVID rolled around, I was like, well, that was a fun ride, but we kind of just stayed busy with it and tried to think about what could we offer people in light of the fact that affiliates might be shut down for the time being or longer. What resources can we give affiliates? What best practices can we share that we've learned here? And, we really took that attitude of like, hey, we're not going to take big strides, but we're going to just keep taking a bunch of little strides. And it's been really beneficial for us. We offered an at-home program, which was really fun to do. And people really enjoyed, and we offered a lot of resources to our affiliates, and we learned a lot about ourselves as far as what affiliates need, don't need, want, and just how that landscape is going to change. So yeah, Hamplan has been, it's definitely been a learning experience for me, not just as a coach, but just as a, someone who's trying to push a small business and help it grow. It's been, especially right now in COVID, I think it's been immensely educational, to say the least.
And then back to my question about coaching competitors, professional athletes, being, an athlete yourself, versus just coaching an everyday class, people that just want to get off the couch, get a little bit, healthier, fitter, do some functional fitness. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah. So which one do I prefer? Honestly, anything in person, I prefer. And then for me, I like people who, I think I most enjoy people who are just looking for their lifestyle fitness. And I think the reason I enjoy them the most is they just seem, they still seem to carry the greatest amount of wonder and awe when things go well. Having been a competitor, it's easy to have an attitude of just never being satisfied. oh, it was only a 2.5 pound PR, it's just like, and I think, there's a lot of extra work that goes into handling that and coaching that and training that. But whereas like, I think people just coming in for everyday fitness, they get a 2.5 pound PR and they're psyched, or, seeing someone who's like, that's the first time I've ever held a handstand, their appreciation of novelty is really an easy thing to feed off of. And it's quite beautiful. It's like, so-and-so got their first toe-to bar, and you look at it in your head, you're like, well, it was just a toe-to bar. I mean, how special can it be? But the impact and appreciation it has on their life, that's contagious, and it's hard not to appreciate that. So I think that's probably where my preference lies.
And when your clients or members of the box achieve that, do you feel like a sense of pride going, I helped? Or, and I'm not saying that I don't want to make it sound negative, like, ooh, look at me, look what I accomplished. But, celebrating in that joy of them. I know you say, you mentioned it now, like, oh, but it's just a toast bar, but seeing the joy and maybe remembering your first toast bar.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Yeah. For me, just personally, I think whatever I ended up doing, I would have been a teacher, because it's just those moments to see the light bulb go off for people. It just is, it's really fun to like empathetically share in that. I just get really excited by it. And similarly, because it was like, I remember all those moments for me. And also because I do believe that like, hey, that person's first time getting a handstand hold, like the attitude change that creates in their life, or the recognition of accomplishment that they now walk away with, is like, that's going to affect them outside of the gym. And that's a really exciting for me. So yeah, I'm definitely like, I'm proud for them, I guess I'll say. Yeah, very, very much so. It's hard not to be, I think.
I'm jumping around with my questions now, but I want to know your training program day to day, as not being a competitor anymore, having different businesses, and just, keeping up your healthy lifestyle. What does a day look for you now, especially training wise?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, I eat better than I ever have. And I think part of that was like, I certainly was someone who used training hard as an excuse to like eat some tasty yum yums. Yeah. But, I definitely eat better than I ever do, more on a schedule. One thing that went down the drain when I stopped competing was my sleep. And I became like, I really abused myself through lack of sleep. Mm. And that was because like, if you're sitting at a desk all day, it's easier to function on 4 hours of sleep than if you're trying to do 6 workouts. Mm. So that's been a big focus of mine, is to kind of return to sleep. But as far as training specifically, I get a little work obsessed. So I have to be very diligent, or have like a good support group around me to make sure I train. Like, just still, I think where my focus is, like, I'll get very like, well, if I don't get this, I'm going to get all of this work done before I train, and then it's 6 p.m. And, unless it's a habit, you're not going to finish a day of work and go train. Some people do it and get really good at it. But so for me, I mean, the general goal is I try to train about 5 times a week. And if I'm in the gym, I give myself like a time limit, like 90 minutes, because I still am like a chronic non-warmer upper. And, I'll fiddle around and procrastinate. That I try and test out as much of our hand plan stuff, especially if it's new stuff, just to share that with my athletes, and share that with our coaches and the athletes I coach in my affiliates. So I try and continually test out that hand plan stuff. Over the last year, I got really into running, which is weird because it was my worst skill in 10 years of competing. I did not work on it enough. And then all of a sudden I stopped competing. I started running like a maniac, which was whatever. It's so funny how that goes. But I found, and COVID gave me a really good appreciation for running, just like being outside in nature again more.
I've never agreed with anything more in my life. Same happened to me. I hated running. And with lockdown, COVID, I started running, and I've found to appreciate. Sorry, I interrupted you now.
No. Yeah. I'm glad you did. Yeah. It's nice to hear other people. And I'm not surprised. Yeah, exactly. And that was it. It was just like anything to get out of the house, run, walk, jog, hike. So I would say like, I've gone back to that broader scope of like, world-class fitness in 100 words, practice the major lifts and basics of gymnastics, but also learn and play new sports. And I'm much better than I have been in years about like getting on my mountain bike, hiking, running, that kind of stuff, which has been awesome. which has been awesome.
Yeah, the running thing for me, it's just, I wasn't necessarily ever good at it, but I hated it. It's so monotonous and it's the same thing over and over again. But there's something about being locked up in your house, not being able to leave, that gives you that desire to just break free and run your feet off of your legs. I think there's maybe a few people, and it helped. I mean, I've improved my running, which is literally one of my worst things. And now, I actually I actually enjoy it. And that's one thing that it's common among CrossFitters. I mean, even the elite and the normal members who say, you know, they hate running unless you came in with a running background. James, your take on or your predictions rather for the coming games in almost just over a week.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea?
So I helped out a little bit with testing for the online format. I don't really have any insight into what they're doing live, and I kind of like it that way because it's sort of like it's like a holiday. It's like a present, you know. It's like your birthday. It's just a nice surprise. I did see Dave posted something that the day one will be the 2007 games and then some. So one of the things I've always liked about the games is I like seeing what athletes do, like we were kind of talking about, breaking outside the gym a little bit. Because I think while that's a core component of CrossFit, it's something most of us don't do enough of. Work out outside, run outside, you know, explore the terrain. And so I always love watching that go down at Aromas. And I think what's really cool about this year's games is with only 10 people, Dave will have a lot of resources at his disposal to just present them with challenges that they might not even know yet what they can succeed at or excel at, which I think will be really cool to see. I think from a competitive standpoint, on the men's side, I read this, the Justin, I pronounce his last name wrong, Medeiros out of the Pacific. Medeiros. He's out of the Pacific Northwest. He's like 9 years old. He's 20.
James, you look 9 years old, so.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much. Yeah. No, I'll take it. That was a compliment I used to hate, but now I love. So, you know, I'm impressed to see how he does just because he's like so young and where he comes from. He comes out of Fort Vancouver CrossFit, and they just have an impressive team pedigree up there. But I think Noah's journey in CrossFit has been really cool. I mean, his whole story about being a volunteer and then that being kind of a decent competitor to a good competitor to second place finisher. Like, it'll be exciting to watch him throw down again, you know, that close to Matt. Because I think last year when he kind of got put side by side with Matt beat him. But Noah has just showed consistent growth. So that I think is exciting. I do think, I joked with somebody today, I think the only person that could beat Matt is if you put him and Tia side by side. You know, if you compare their scores, you know, their placing at the end of the weekend, I think Matt and Tia are so hard to beat. But I've also been, I'm giving you a lot here. Sorry, I told you I rambled.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it.
I've been more into the games. You know, I've never been someone to really follow the games. Like, I pay attention to it, but I'm not like rattling off stats. But I've been way more into it this year. Just because I think, like you said, right, like we're all cooped up. Everybody wants to break free, like just looking for different stuff to track to. But I think Tia and Matt are so hard to beat. I mean, I've talked about this a bunch, but last year at the games when Tia did that squat clean and she won the squat clean ladder.
I'm getting goosebumps. I'm literally getting goosebumps. That was
every time I talk about it, I same thing. I mean, she stood that bar up and you were like, this woman is the most powerful creature on the planet. You know, like
she's like this big.
Yeah, right. She owned that place. She just has like this, you know, like when she competes, because she's totally friendly and her husband is absolutely lovely. But when she competes, she just has this aura that's just like, holy, you know, it's palpable, which is really cool. So I think she's so tough to beat. But I will say, again, just Haley Adams, you know, 19, 20 years old, just stone-faced killer, shows up and just does work. And again, training down there, Mayhem, like her journey in CrossFit has been incredibly impressive. So
and it's
excited to see what she does too.
It's just started. I mean, she's got the youth on her side.
Yeah. So I think it'll be exciting. And, but I do think Matt and Tia are whatever they're doing, they just kind of have figured out a really good recipe for them. And, you know, they just,
Surround yourself with success. Just
right.
get the best person there is and try and beat them. But
Exactly.
looking at the online games, and I know Armin and Bunch and Morning Chalk Up, they drew up the statistics of Matt and Tia's scores, and they ended up dead even. I think that was just insane. So whatever they're doing and whatever Shane is doing
Yeah.
is obviously working. Yourself being a coach, how would you approach training the two fittest athletes in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really hard. I think one, like you said, what I've learned in my training, and it's certainly like at that level, you got to pay attention to details, and what you do certainly matters. But when I hear great athletes talk, especially in team sports, when I hear great athletes talk, one of the most common characteristics, other than like everybody's like master the foundations, but it's like, yeah, of course. But I always hear great athletes, and even in team sports, talk about the fact that they're always really eager to compare themselves and compete against whoever else they think is the best. And, if someone is like, hey, I'm the best, that athlete's like, I'm going to go find that guy, and I'm going to go guard him. I'm going to tackle him. I'm going to train against him. I'm going to see what he's got, because I don't believe he's best. I believe I am. And so, you have two athletes who are kind of at the tip of the spear right now. And I think when you put them next to each other and put them in scenarios where neither of them want to lose together, it's like they're just always going to push that envelope forward. I think that's one of the biggest advantages Matt and Tia have over everybody else. And it's crazy.
Your future in the sport of CrossFit, you said you made a premature decision 4 years ago, but I mean, you look 9, you are still young. I mean, you can still go and become a master's athlete. I mean, you can still have a very long career in the sport of CrossFit. And I think that's the beauty of the sport as well. Your plans prior 2020, when we all can escape our houses, looking to the future, business-wise, hand plan your future in the sport.
I mean, for me, I don't know if I'll try any big competitive runs. Like, I don't even know. I have some good buddies who are in the masters community, and and they kind of, some of them newly, 35, 40 years old. I'll be 35 in June. I think 35 in June. And I don't know if I'll compete in masters. For me, it's like, I'm just going to attack the open a little bit more aggressively. Last year I had my worst open finish, I think, since like my first year of CrossFit, and it reflected my diligence to training and also just the continuing ever rising tide of fitness in the community. But I would like to focus on training a little bit harder, attacking the open harder, having a better finish than I did last year. So that's kind of my competitive push for me, my goal. Everything else, it's, I don't know, a lot of it, I don't want to say a lot of it's hurry up and wait. I mean, for hand plan, we have some big focuses as far as continuing to just push our growth of our affiliate, our affiliate community, reaching out to more affiliates. And one of the big things in that is, I think, at the end of this year, is just finding ways to communicate and provide them resources better and involve them better in what we're doing. And, maybe do, because everyone's a little bit better versed in how to communicate long distance online now, right? Like our Zoom skills and our FaceTime skills are tuned up. So just find ways to communicate with them better, via Zoom or YouTube Live, and support those communities that way, and just reach out to them and have more dialogue with them, just because I think we have grown a lot. And it's like, where once we had a lot more connection with all of our affiliates, now that we've grown, it's a little bit harder to do. So I think that's probably going to be the big project for us. We just rebuilt our website, which was an ongoing long process, but super educational. And then on the gym side of it, it's just, try to keep offering fitness to people within the rules that the government set. And I have been impressed, and I keep going back to that. You said this, like you said, you just wanted to break free. When we started Zoom classes, in my head, I was like, this isn't going to work. It's going to be so stupid. But, much to my surprise, and pleasantly to my surprise, people loved it because they wanted something different. They need, it's like, they've been doing fitness for years for a reason, and they wanted it any way they could get it. And now we're doing, in-person classes again, but outside, and there's all these restrictions, but people still come in and they're willing, and they participate and they follow the rules. So just to continue to adapt to that, and, don't lose sight of the fact, like, just because the circumstances change doesn't mean people's desires to be fit and have a community are going to change. It's just given the tools we have now, how do I facilitate that? And that'll be on the in-person side, CDP at the affiliate. That's kind of the focus for those companies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Yeah.
And to get to know you a little bit better. And good luck with the rest of 2020. May we all survive and leave this year healthy and safe. And a little bit stronger mentally and physically.
Certainly, I think we will be. And best to you down there in South Africa. And thanks for reaching out. So maybe I'll get to travel down there again someday. It's been a while.
I mean, that would be fantastic.
So